Today on Mr. Media, I'll talk to dad turned documentary filmmaker Jeremy Seifert, who chronicles his search for safe food to serve his children in GMO OMG. Stick around. This movie will scare genetically modified poop right out of you. So much media, so little time. Who keeps track of it all? That would be me. This is Bob Andelman, and this is a Mr. Media interview, brought to you by Amazon.com, Audible.com, and 1-800-DIAL-DJs. Please stop by the website, MrMedia.com, click on our advertisers, support the show. And remember, there's more than 1,000 interviews available at MrMedia.com. We've been doing this since February 2007. Hope you'll find something you like. And thanks for listening. Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience of agrochemical lobbyists and the politicians who follow their voting instructions and talking points to the letter in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. Jeremy Seifert's oldest son likes seeds. He's fascinated by their variety of colors, shapes, sizes, and function. Now, Jeremy Seifert and his wife Jen want to raise healthy children and be healthy themselves. But the more the Seiferts learned about GMOs, genetically modified organisms, the less confident they became that they could control the kinds of foods and ingredients that they serve their kids. In his new documentary film, GMO OMG, Seifert takes his family and us on a long and winding, torturous trip to discover whether genetically modified foods are safe or even avoidable. His results are chilling. Now, if you are currently or have ever raised children, you know how challenging it is to get young people to eat good food and make smart dietary choices. But whether you shop at Whole Foods or Publix, Fresh Market or Kroger, it's not as easy as paying a little more for organics to get it right. Don't say I didn't warn you. Now, GMO OMG debuted at the Berlin Film Festival and is beginning its theatrical release in New York City, Los Angeles, and Seattle in September 2013. The film has attracted the support of several celebrities, including an Inconvenient Truth producer, Laurie David, who's the, well, I always have to point this out, I guess, ex-wife of Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm creator Larry David, actors Glenn Howerton and Caitlin Olsen of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Kristen Bauer Van Straten of True Blood, and executive producer Elizabeth Kucinich, who's the wife of former Democratic U.S. Congressman Dennis Kucinich. The film was also supported by a Kickstarter campaign. And Jeremy Seifert, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. Before we get started on scaring people, tell folks a little about your life before GMOs kind of got in the way of your pursuit of happiness. I mean, you're a husband, father of 3, right?
Yeah, normal guy living in LA, 3 beautiful children. And then I read this article that came out of Haiti about 10,000 rural farmers marching in the streets saying, "We will burn these seeds that Monsanto gave to Haiti." So that sort of changed everything, captured my imagination, and I plunged into this film.
Well, and that's it. I mean, how do you had made a film before, a film called Dive. That was 2010. How did this tickle your fancy, so to speak, to make a film about it and not just be like, "Oh man, that's terrible," and then move on?
Yeah, it's a great question. The reason is that I had been to Haiti before the earthquake, and so it was very personal to me. I had experienced the poverty there, the hunger, the desperation, and yet I didn't really understand or know much about GMOs. So when I saw this article about them willing to burn seeds, and I knew just how desperate they were and that they needed those seeds to feed their families, I didn't understand it. And I wanted to understand it, and I wanted to know what was at stake for them. So I went and spent a little over a week with them and the leader, Siobhan Jean-Baptiste, listening to their stories.
Now, I don't want to stay on Haiti too long, but I am curious. This is a country that has been hit by so many disasters. It's impoverished in many ways, in most ways. People are not necessarily well educated there, and yet they knew to reject these seeds. Why are they so much smarter than Americans?
That was one of my first questions. What do they know that we don't know, and how do they know it? Well, Siobhan Jean-Baptiste is a highly educated person. He is part of, and the peasant movement of Papai is part of the larger La Via Campesina, which is an international peasant movement. And they are very sensitive to the onslaught of multinational corporations because they've been hurt by it around the world. So they're in tune to it because it affects them deeply and immediately. And something like seeds coming in, which were a gift, but then the following year they would have to pay for them, and then the following year would come the GMOs, and oh, you have to buy the Roundup that we also make that goes with it. And you know what? These seeds don't really grow well in your soil because they're not from your area, so you need these heavy inputs, synthetic fertilizers, and then starts this cycle of debt. Meanwhile, they lose their own seeds, they lose their food sovereignty, and they lose part of their culture.
Do these the agrochemical companies just see like a poor company like Haiti as a pushover for them? I mean, is there anything noble in what they did to offer seeds to this country?
Well, I can't
I
judge
have to
their
ask.
hearts. I mean, there are good people working at these companies, and there are people who do care and maybe had good motivation, but then you have to question, what's really going on? Why would they do that? Because when they said this is a gift, Siobhan Jean-Baptiste and all those rural farmers said this is a death gift. This is a Trojan horse. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I can't judge their hearts, but you have to question it.
Now, obviously, these companies, Monsanto, DuPont, and there's one other I think that you highlight,
Dow Chemical,
Dow Chemical,
Syngenta.
Syngenta. Obviously, they're companies, they're corporations, they have a profit motive, but they also have amongst them tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of employees. Why don't I mean? Do they not care about their employees and their welfare by pushing this? If it's such a dangerous, or at least we don't even know if it's dangerous on people.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, from the industry's perspective, they're totally safe. And yet the FDA has said, we leave it up to you to test for safety. And the industry has, by and large, done 3-month-long studies, which are inadequate to test for the toxicity of a new food. So you have industry-funded or industry-affiliated studies saying that they're safe. And I don't know, if the higher-ups really know what's going on. I'm sure they have to. They have to know that even in those 3-month studies, there could have been implications of something different or new. They won't release the raw data, so we don't know. But yeah, it's not just sure, there's thousands of employees, but there's millions, hundreds of millions of Americans who they're also feeding their product.
Now, GMO is a term that I think is just kind of still getting into the general conscious of most people around the country. It started off as the kind of thing where environmentalists were talking about it, and people who were always activists about something were talking about it. A lot of people out of California who the rest of the country kind of goes, oh yeah, there they go again. Explain for the average person what a GMO is and why it affects them, and it's not just something that people in California who are a little liberal or maybe to the left care about.
Okay. Well, so basically a GMO is a genetically modified organism. This has only been made possible with first the discovery of the double helix of DNA only 60 years ago, then the advent of biotechnology, and then you have in the late 70s, and then really the first product that came on the market was in the mid-90s. It was the Flavor Saver tomato, which essentially took a gene from a fish and put it into the DNA of a tomato for a longer shelf life. It was a commercial failure. But the main GMOs right now resist herbicides or accept herbicides. So Roundup kills everything, but that genetically modified soy plant can bathe in Roundup and live. And then the other main GMO is one that produces its own pesticide. So in every cell of the plant, turned on 24 hours a day, is a Bt toxin that when the bugs munch on it, it kills them. So you have herbicide resistor, pesticide producer. The reason that some independent scientists are, wanting further testing and raising concerns is because these genetically modified crops are totally new. It's a new thing. It's only been on the market for 15 years, and there are potential risks and new proteins that can be formed from these manipulating the DNA in that way.
And so this is along the same lines in some ways as people have been taking antibiotics for so many years, and we've got drug-resistant bacteria now that have come up. And I assume you could explain it to people the same kind of way. We're putting things into the food that will change the nature of the foods. One of the things you talk about is that it's not as simple as just saying, okay, I'm not going to get this product or that product, because so many products, particularly in the United States, are made with corn and soy, and that these GMOs are getting into, even if you don't think that they're in your product, if you're eating beef or something that's been fed by corn or soy, chances are the GMOs are, following downstream. Am I overstating that?
No, I mean, the main GMOs on the market right now are corn, soy, canola, cotton, and then there's papaya coming out of Hawaii, crookneck squash, and a few others. But so the corn and the soy, it's over 90% of corn and soy are genetically modified. They make their way into about 80% of processed foods. So it is nearly inescapable. And then they also are behind most of the meat and dairy in this country, because they feed those GMOs to the pigs, chickens, and cows, and that's where we get our meat and dairy. So they're also behind that. And you asked earlier, why should people pay attention and care? I think, there are potential health risks, okay? We don't know. We can't exactly connect GMOs to autoimmune disorder or allergies, and all of those have been on the rise since the mid-90s. But if you don't know and you're operating from a place of ignorance, especially as a parent, I think the precautionary principle says wait, rather than, oh, let's just feed our kids this stuff and see what happens in 20 years. People, I want to say people aren't paying attention, but I feel like I was paying attention to the world around me, and yet I didn't know anything about them 3 years ago, because they've almost intentionally we've been kept in the dark, that, they aren't labeled, and we never really talked about them like they did in Europe, and the people had a discussion as a society and asked for labeling, and they got it. And you can't find many GMOs now in the EU.
And you talk about how this really upsets you. I mean, at one point in the film, you say you're hearing this information, and you say, how is that possible? It's pissing me off. I'm ready to get into a fist fight, and I'm probably not adding the correct level of emotion to that. But I mean, this really upsets you. This is not like you didn't just say, oh, let's go do a fun movie and go to Norway and go here and go to the Rust Belt and go to Monsanto headquarters just for fun.
Right. Yeah, I think I was in a place at that point too where I was really discovering new things, and I think it was the cumulative effect of all that these chemical companies are doing, and that corporate mindset that asks questions of profit and bottom line, and they're beholden to their shareholders. They're not asking questions of human health, the health of the environment. How should we then live together and interact with the earth? They're not asking that. And I think it was, the potential health risks was just one small part of it, but then there was that feeling of being duped. Like, how did I not know about this? It's everywhere, and yet, and I'm a, fairly educated person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the seed patenting and the sort of death of the family farmer, which isn't attributable just to GMOs. It's attributable to this larger agribusiness, agrochemical system that started after World War II in earnest. But I think it was just finding out all those things, and the government collusion, and the U.S. State Department essentially being an ambassador of these biotech companies around the world that we found out from WikiLeaks. And yeah, so it just struck me in my core, because food is such an intimate part of our daily lives. It is our most intimate interaction with the world around us. We eat the earth. And you would, I guess, like an idiot, I just assumed that everything was okay and that, the FDA and the EPA, surely they're looking out for us. But that's a very naive view of the world. And we know when a corporation, a big corporation, is getting bigger and bigger and sort of monopolizing a market, we've had this experience with the lead industry, with the tobacco industry, with the banking system and that failure, that we should question this. We've had the experience of being lied to over and over and over again, because they're trying to protect themselves and they're trying to make money, and they'll do and say anything to keep that going for as long as possible.
Jeremy, one more question, we'll let you go. This film, you take your family, your kids, your wife, Jen, on this journey with you. Do you ever get concerned in the process that you might actually scare your own kids with not just your emotion about this, but just the information that you're feeding them? They're very young kids.
Yeah. Well, I'm careful how I give information to my children. I think I'm naturally a lighthearted and playful person, and that's how I protect them from information that they don't need to know yet. I don't say, children, guess what? Monsanto at one point hired Blackwater. Do you know what Blackwater is?
Yeah.
I tell them, and children are amazing what they can really understand. And it's amazing, too, if you're listening to them, because they have such a beautiful perspective on life, because they still have some awe and wonder. So, yeah, I thought it was good to bring them on the journey, so to speak, and then I did protect them and keep certain things from them that they don't need to know yet.
Okay. Well, folks, listen, you can watch for Jeremy Seifert's new documentary film, GMO OMG. It's coming to a theater near you soon. It'll eventually be on DVD. You can check for theater near you at gmofilm.com. Jeremy, I'm going to guess that there must be Twitter and Facebook accounts?
Yeah, there's Facebook. I think it's GMO OMG Film, just Facebook. You can search GMO OMG, and then Twitter is GMO OMG Film, I think.
Very good. Well, it's a fascinating film. Really gives you a lot to think about. And even if you haven't been paying much attention to this yet, it's a good introduction to what's going on and why a lot of people are really angry, including Jeremy Seifert. Jeremy, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for joining us on Mr. Media today.
Thank you for having me.
You can see and hear almost 1,000 Mr. Media interviews by visiting our main site, mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. Or check out the more than 200 video interviews on the Mr. Media radio site on YouTube. And I'd sure appreciate if you'd show some love from Mr. Media's advertisers, including Stitcher. Apple named Stitcher a top 5 news app of 2011. It's a free mobile app for your smartphone or tablet that lets you listen to your favorite shows and discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. You can listen whenever you want to more than 5,000 shows, get customized recommendations, and discover what your friends are listening to. My own list of Stitcher favorites is pretty eclectic. I start my day with an hour of MSNBC's Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Then it's the latest 2-minute update from the Onion News Network. After that, I'll listen to WTF with Mark Maron, Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and excerpts from E's Chelsea Lately and The Soup with Joel McHale. Also in regular rotation on my Stitcher playlist, the BS Report with ESPN's Bill Simmons, the TechCrunch headlines, and the Don Geronimo Show. The latest episodes of each show, whether originating from broadcasts, cable TV, radio syndication, or podcasts, are continuously updated. Stitcher is a free app for your iPhone, iPad, Kindle, Fire, BlackBerry, Droid, and more. And show your support of Mr. Media by getting, did I mention it's free? The app at Stitcher.com/Mr. Media. That's Stitcher.com/MR Media. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. We're also supported by Audible. Check out Audible's 30-day trial membership and download the audiobook version of the book everyone's been talking about, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Sign up for your free trial today at audible.com/radio. Again, audibletrial.com/radio. And finally, if you need a disc jockey for a wedding, bar mitzvah, corporate event, or just a big old party, please consider calling 1-800-DIAL-DJs, the party authority for all your party entertainment needs. You can call 1-800-DIAL-DJs or go to their website, 1-800-DIAL-DJs.com, and tell them Mr. Media sent you. And thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Joe Muto, author of An Atheist in the Foxhole in bookstores now. Also, you may know me better as the Fox News Mole. You can watch me on Mr. Media, find out what Bill O'Reilly is really like in bed. That was weird.